Welcome back. Today's lesson, we are going to talk about or review outlining and subtotaling. So the idea with outlining and subtotaling is that you can kind of group things together based on the information in your worksheet. So you can show, almost like showing all the details or not showing all the details. So if you expand it, you see all the details once you've grouped them. And if you don't want to see all the details, you collapse it down and you can just see maybe the totals amount. And sometimes they'll consider those total amounts the subtotals or the important parts. So the simplest form of data grouping involves taking a row of cells that have one related attribute, clustering them together, and then collapsing the cluster and possibly reopening it later. Reduces the size of the worksheet and it allows you to maybe like keep some information hidden for a little while until you're ready to reveal it and show it, especially if you're using this as a presentation tool. It says whether you group rows together or perform an operation such as an auto outlining or auto subtotaling, in which groups are automatically created, which is what we'll see in the second part of this lesson today. Excel adds controls next to the rows in column headings. These are outline symbols. Boxes marked with minus and plus symbols are placed to the left of the group of the rows above the grouped columns. These symbols can collapse or expand the group content. The upper and left, on the upper left corner, there's going to be some numbers to let you show or hide the group contents of a particular level. When you have two groups that are beside each other, you have two levels. They are collapsed. They view to expand one, but you can have groups within the groups, and each group level you create adds another number to the symbol in the upper left-hand corner. So essentially, every time you group, a number comes with it, so you can kind of keep the innermost, outermost groupings kind of organized, if you will. So we're going to go back. We're going to start the lesson back here on our vet clinic file. And we are going to stay on patient list. And they want us to go and clear the filters. And then we can see that we have one applied, but they want us to try it through the data tab this time. So I'm going through data, I'm going to sort and filter, and I'm pressing clear. Okay. And my filter is now gone from my column. It says next to cat or dog here in B, we're going to press the down arrow, and they want us to sort A to Z. Okay, so now all our information is sorted on if they are a cat or a dog, and C comes before D, so in alphabetical order or ascending, that's what would happen. And they want us to right-click the row heading for row 29. So I'm going to come down here and do that. And the reason why we're doing this is because it is the divide between cat and dog. Now, we are going to put the subtotals in here, and we are going to do all the work. The next time I come through and I show you how to do this, you are going to see with the subtotal command up here in the outline group, you don't even have to do all the work that I'm about to show you. So this is actually what I would probably say the manual way of doing all of this, and it does require a little bit more work. When you do the subtotal command, it will, as long as it's sorted, it will automatically put the totals in, put the groupings in, and it's a lot easier. But sometimes it's better if you do it this way, so we get to see both ways in this lesson. So they want us to right-click row 29 and insert. So we're going to insert a new row. And then they want us to go to H29. And they want us to type in number of cats. And once we've done that, we select G29. And they want us to make it bold. So I'm going to press Control B. And then they want us to use the auto sum feature. So I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I'm going to click auto sum. I'm going to scroll up here, and I'm going to make sure it selected everything correctly. It stops at row 4 as it should because there's words, and it goes down to 28. And I'm going to press enter. And then it is giving us a message because of the owner number. that has to do with the pre-existing number, and this is a good reason to make it a warning, and we're going to say yes. Okay, so that sums up the function. So that's one option, just like it is one option in the subtotal commands. So I'm going to press delete, and I'm going to show you another option. We're going to go to the formulas tab, and I'm going to go to auto sum, and this time I'm going to pick count numbers. So I want to see how many cats I have, opposed to the total of the order owner number, which wouldn't be something I would do anyway. So now I want to see how many cats I have. I press enter. I have 24 cats, and then I also don't get that warning message anymore either. And then I should be bold on G29. They did not have us bold on H at this point. All right. Now we're going to scroll down, and we're going to do the same thing for dogs. We're going to come over here, and we're going to type in number of dogs. Press enter, and I'm going to come back up, and I'm going to use that count function again. I'm going to the formulas, dropping down auto sum, and I'm picking count, and I'm scrolling up to check and make sure it selects the right thing. It didn't this time because all of these are numbers, so it doesn't stop again until 4. So I have to go through and I have to manually select. I'm going to be careful not to include the 24 for the number of cats. So I am going to select starting one row below that. So I am going to end up with G30 to 58. I'm going to press enter, and I have 29 dogs. Okay. And then I am also going to bold that. All right, so what we have done here is we have separated our data based on how we want to see it. I want to see it by cat, and I want to see it by dog. I want to know how many dogs I have, and I want to know how many cats I have. I had to insert the row. I had to insert the label heading. I had to insert the function. You'll see again later on with that subtotal function on the data tab, you don't even have to do all that as long as you can follow along with the dialog box. All right, so now we're going to select rows 5 through 28. Okay, so this is all our cats. We did not include that total row. Okay, so make sure you have that. We did not include the total row when we selected to set up for grouping. So I go to data, I go to the outline group, and then I am going to drop down group, and I'm going to do group. And you'll notice the 1 and the 2 that they're talking about, the minus because it's expanded right now, and that would collapse it. That appears once I've grouped my data, and I'll show you how this all works in just a second. Now we're going to select rows 30 to 58, again, not including that number of cats, and I'm not going to include the number of dogs in 59. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the data tab in the outline group, and this time I'm just going to press group, okay, because it does the same thing as pressing down the down arrow. So it says to collapse the cats, click the minus next to that, and then it'll contain just the cats. The control becomes a plus, and then you can collapse the dogs as well. So I'm going to do the dogs while I'm down here. I'm going to press the minus, and they all go up, and now I only see number of dogs. I'm going to press that minus again to collapse it, and now I only see number of cats. And that's the reason why you don't select that total row when you are grouping, because then it becomes the only thing visible. Now, if I want to expand it, I can press the plus, and I can collapse it again to do the same. I can come up here to the data tab, and I can do show detail, and I can do hide detail. If and only if I have this all selected, will that work. Okay, so I have to do select all if I want to do it up there. Okay, so this allows us to show and not show certain things in my document. All right, so speaking of select all, they want me to click the select all button, and they want me to go to the data tab, and they want me to do the show all, and they're showing you how to do all of it. The other one, of course, is the hide detail, and that will hide all the information as well. So I'm back to show detail because they want us to put a grouping on columns B through F, so now I'm going to have some groupings by columns, and then I'm going to go to the data tab in the outline group, and I'm going to press group. And now I have it grouped this way as well, and I can press the minus next to the G. and then I can press expand and make it come back. Now I'm going to show you how to ungroup just in case. So if I select D and I press ungroup, it actually just separates these two groups. But if you want to delete the entire group, you have to select that initial selection of the column. So in this case, B through G, and then press ungroup and it will go away. So if I undo here and I just pick C, you can't just be within the group and press ungroup. Okay. You need to select where the grouping is or the initial selection and then press ungroup. And if I wanted to go do that for the cats and dogs, then I would need to go select 5 through 28 and then 30 through 58 to to ungroup those. So that's all individual is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I'm going to press save on that. And now we're going to go try what's called an auto outline. Okay, so an auto outline is generally used for complex reports, such as a balance sheet with assets and liabilities are broken down. And you want to, because there's a lot of lines, if you will, sub-departments they call them, and that grouping data can be tedious. Suppose you inserted total values cells along the bottom rows of the related cells or along the right column, because that's usually where your totals go, or both. He said you'll probably need to do this anyway for a formal balance sheet or for a table with names of salespeople's in rows and sales for days in the week in columns. Excel can detect when and why you set up your worksheet like this. So when you auto outline a table or worksheet full of tables, it creates the groups automatically. So we, in the last couple slides, did it. Now we're going to see it with a different worksheet here, what happens with the auto outline feature. So I'm going to use a new file called 09 Critical Care Expenses that I thought I downloaded. So give me 1 second. There it is. Okay, so here we have the Woodhill Animal Clinic expense sheet. So we see actual expenses and reimbursable expenses, and we see mileage, gas, hotel, pharmaceuticals, meals, supplies. So this is an expense sheet, and we see it for a couple days in March, and we see a total. And we also see total per day. So this is the different totals that they're talking about. So I imagine at this point, if you know, some animals can come to your location and get treated, but other animals can't. Like if you have, you know, livestock, you would want to have the vet come to you, and this is probably the vet keeping track of the miles that they drove in their car to get to these places, the gas to fill up the tank, if they had to stay overnight at a hotel, any of the medicines that they used, food, and any other supplies that they needed. So that's what an expense sheet is, and they're used all the time in the business world for people that travel. Most businesses will reimburse you for the expenses that you incur when you are traveling. So back to auto outline. We are going to select H14. So H14 is here, and they want us to bold it. So I'm going to bold it. And I am going to use the auto sum feature. So I'm going to do that through the home tab this time. And it is selecting the totals up above. And realistically, we could, and I'll show you, okay, 1,634.50. I'm going to press delete and auto sum it again, but this time I'm going to select over here. And it's the same, because this is a nice thing about accounting, because this is an accounting thing, that you can double check yourself that the totals going across and the totals going up and down should be the same. And it's a way to what we call double check yourself. So I'm going to auto sum and have it select above, because that's generally how the auto sum feature works. And it is bolded. And they want me to do the same thing down here in H24. So I'm going to bold it. I'm going to use auto sum. I'm going to ensure that it is selecting correctly. And I end up with 1041.10. All right, now it says to select B6. Okay, so B6 is not the heading, the main heading, okay, the title, if you will. It's where the actual part of our expense report starts, almost like your column headings, right? So I'm going to select B6 to H24 down here. And that's going to be both expenses. So I'm essentially selecting all my data, which is weird because I have a blank row and then I have a blank column, and that's different than we're used to. So when you do these, you just essentially start by selecting the content, not the title. Okay. So I'm going to go to the data tab. I'm going back to the outline group. Okay. And then in group, I'm going to drop down, and this time I'm going to pick auto outline. And it's going to outline C, okay, through G, and it's going to outline 8 through 13, and then 18 through 23. And then, okay, I am going to take this and I am going to show you how we can hide all the details, and it only does the total row because remember I showed you it was grouped, and I'm going to unhide this so you can see it again. I'll just do 2, 1, 2, see? Okay, so if I do 2, it does the innermost. So I have C through G, and when I collapse that, it only shows H because H is the total. So if you're not used to this, it looks like that it is all the way over here, okay? When it is grouping, it's not really selecting H. It stops at G. It's C through G. Same thing here. It's 8 through 13. 14 is what's visible. Okay, same thing down here. It's not 24, it's through 23. And again, I can hide all of that if I want to as well. And then of course, if I want to get rid of a group, I just select, I expand it, and then I select it, and then I click ungroup. But we'll leave it all grouped together. All right. So the last thing we're going to do is we are going to do all this outlining in a different format. And in this format, we are going to see Excel do more of the work. So we're going to use a new file. It's called the server stats. And what happens here is Excel is going to put the functions in. Excel is going to insert the new rows. So as long as you can remember the golden rule to make sure it is sorted in the correct order to start, then life is great. So rule number 1, sort. Okay, so we see usage stats, and we see some dates, departments, regions, bandwidth, data in, data out, and transactions. So this must be tracking, Wi-Fi or internet use, if you will. And so we are sorted by date. It appears here in column A. Okay, and then within those columns, we see it sorted by department, and then you have region. So we could sort by region, we could sort by department, we could sort by date. It just depends on who you're working for and what you want to look by, essentially. And what you want to look by is essentially usually how you want to sort. So we are going to select, including the column headings, once we have it sorted. So I'm telling you it is sorted, and I'll go over this again in just 1 second so you can see that. A6 to G141. Okay, remember we're on row 141 right now. And I'm going to go to the data tab, and I am going to sort. Okay, so here's where the sort comes in. And I am going to click on the sort, and I am going to pick date. And they want us to do oldest to newest. And I am going to press OK. So I am sorted now the way I would like to be sorted. Okay. So now once you have it sorted, and say you click off and you're doing something else and then you decide to come subtotal, you have to select again. So again, when you're going to do a subtotal, you want to select all the way from your headings down to the bottom right-hand corner of information, which is 141 in this case. All right, so we are going to click on subtotal over here on the data tab in the outline group. And here's our dialog box. So I take notes on this dialog box. Add each change in. Okay. Add each change in is how do you want to sum. Where do you want the row that has the total or the average or the low or the high, whatever function is that you're doing? Okay, we luckily in this one really could do it by two, because if you look over here, point of sale is this in or by department are very similar to one another in terms of the date. So in this one, we could do either or. We can't do it by region because region is not sorted. Look real quick behind here and look at column C. They are not organized in any way, shape, or form, but these two columns are. Now we sorted by date, but that still kept B organized. Usually whatever you sort by is what you would pick this first at change in, and this is one of those rare times where it is not. But if you can keep in mind that wherever it is organized by or what you have sorted by is a good rule of thumb for what you pick for at each change in. So at each change in, we're going to do department because that's where I want the totals to go. Every time there's a change in column B is when I want to put a new total in. Okay. So if the next thing you pick is what function you want to do, and we're going to pick sum. Okay. And then this next one is what columns are you doing the totaling in? It has to be a column with numbers in it. Keep that where it says add subtotal 2. If you can remember that has to be columns with numbers in it, that will help you out. And you can have more than one. So we are going to do average bandwidth. We're going to do data in, data out, and transaction. Okay, so then you have 3 more questions. Do I want to replace the current subtotals? We don't have any to worry about, so we can leave that alone. I'm going to show you in a second how you do that, go around that. You could put these on each page. Every time there's a new total line, you could put it on a new page if you wanted to. And then do you want the totals above or below? Most of the times you do totals below. And then remember, if you want to get rid of them, just like when you do data validation, you would select and come here, and that would remove them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press OK. And now look what happens. Remember, I wanted the totals to divide between column B. So once it got done with merchandising, it put a line in. Got done with purchasing, it put a line in there. So what's happened? It's sorted. We sorted. It put every time there was a break between column B and it found the different words, it inserted the row. It put the name in, merchandising total, and then for each one of our columns over here, okay, it has the totals because that's where I told it to put the total. I come down here, purchasing, then the totals. It put it in bold, it inserted the column, and look over here, it even grouped it. So you see all these subgroups, okay, these inner groups, and then you also see, so you have innermost and it goes to outermost, and then I can collapse it all down if I wanted to. And I can also expand it depending on which way I want to show. So if I keep scrolling down here, I will eventually see I'm way past 141 now. It added 40 some odd more rows, and I have a grand total for all of my subtotals as well. Now, if you look up here at your formula bar, you're going to notice that it says equals subtotal. That's the function, and there's a number. So it will always be the subtotal function, and then it'll have a number. The 9 means use the subtotal function, and in this case, I want you to add. Number 9 means add. All right, so now I'm going to select all my range again. I have a new range to select. I'm going to come up here to my column headings. I'm going to go back to subtotal. Okay, if I need to get rid of a subtotal, I select the range and click remove all, and they will all go away. See, they're all gone. I'll bring them. I'm going to quickly put those back in there. I thought I could undo that, and I clearly can't. I just have to reselect my range because you'll notice that they were all unselected from the rows that I added from the last time. So department, sub, check, check, check. And then I'm going to press OK. So now they're all back. I'm going to make sure I am selected correctly before I start the next one. Okay. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I want it at the department change, and I want all the words to kind of line up. And then this time I'm going to find the average. And I'm going to do it for the same 4. But now here's the thing. I can either replace sum or I can add to sum. If I want to replace sum, I leave that checked. But if I want sum and average, I have to deselect that. And then I press OK. And now look. Now I have average and I have total for each one of these. Scroll down, a lot more rows, keep scrolling down. Then all of a sudden I have grand average and grand total. And what I want to show you here now is that I have the subtotal function again, but this time there's a number 1. So what does 1 mean? It means average. And D7 to D229 is our range for this one. So every time you have the subtotal function, it is going to have a different number. Now, if I click on FX here, it will pull up the function if I wanted to, the function arguments box if I needed it, okay? And later on, I will go through, there's a bunch of different numbers. There's a little cheat sheet that's in your binder that I gave you that will tell you the different numbers and what each one stands for, because if you were typing this in, if you were underneath this, you would have to know what that number is, but we'll look at that at a later time. So, and review a little bit more on that. So I hope that helps you out. Thank you very much.